Thank you, everyone. Yes, lunch is over. Let's work a bit on the DeFi industry. First of all, I would like to introduce our great participants today. I know some of you come from other countries today. I start from Angelina. And then, guys, you can just introduce yourself, sure. And we start the discussion about DeFi and compliance.
So my name is Angelina Kwan. I am visiting your amazingly beautiful country. I usually come during ski season, so it's really different to see it with sun and warmth. I am a senior advisor at IMC Asia Pacific. So I work in Hong Kong for IMC, where we do market making on every major exchange, traditional exchange around the world. My previous experience includes being the global COO for BitMEX, being the global COO for HashKey. I am very, very involved in crypto, and we really, really want to see a global ecosystem build out with collaboration and cooperation with Crypto Valley and Web3 Harbor. So one last plug, please come to Hong Kong in October. We're going to have a ton of events called Blocktober. We would love to see you all there. If you're a developer or if you're just interested in digital assets, please do think about coming to Asia Pacific, because we've got deals, we've got people, we've got a lot of support in terms of digital assets, and a lot of things are happening. So
thank you, Angelina.
Thank you.
So it's great we have Asian representation today, because I would like really a bit shift from only MiCA and Europe, but we will cover everything. Julian.
Hi, good afternoon. Julian G from YouHodler, legal counsel. It's now, I think, my 4th Crypto Valley conference. Wow. Have been in the space since 2017. Here to discuss this blessed question here. I just want to leave a bombshell. I would say that does compliance hold the key to mainstream DeFi adoption? I would say partially, but if you allow me some time later, I will explain why.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. You said bullshit.
Partially.
Oh, partially.
Partially.
Fantastic.
I think Lucas would agree.
That would be my answer.
I think Lucas will agree. But
it's good. So I think it's important that we have fun, because I want people to remember this session, not because we are boring compliance people, yeah? Benjamin.
Partially.
I swear to you, I thought he said bullshit. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Hey, everyone. I'm Benjamin Zemmour. I'm the head of sales at Scorechain. So I started crypto in 2017. Actually, a little bit before the crash. As you might expect, I didn't sell at the right time. It didn't teach me anything, because in 2021 I didn't as well. So if you search for any advice about crypto trading, don't ask me. Otherwise, you can ask me about crypto KYC and blockchain analytics tools. So I'm more on the product side, because in 2020 I started early at Scorechain, and what we provide is a tool for blockchain analytics, rather focus on pure B2B compliance rather than forensics. So it allows compliance officers to get access to a dashboard, API connection, with a rule-based NGI system, so they can kind of receive real-time alerts, real-time freezing system with third-party solution providers like Custody. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I will be able to tell you a little bit more about that. Just for you to know, Scorechain started in 2015, so quite a long time ago, and we have helped customers in 350 companies and 45 different countries.
And Lucas, your turn.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Lucas, the CEO and one of the co-founders of 21 Analytics. I bought my first Bitcoin 11 years ago. I work in this industry since 10 years. I'm based in Zug, and I'm here every year. So yeah, with 21 Analytics, we're the Swiss market leader in everything related to travel rule. We're a technology company, so I'm a techie, like most people are in Bitcoin since a longer time. And yeah, I'm very keen on diving into this topic.
Okay, thank you. Maybe just a couple words about me. I'm board member of Crypto Valley, and also I'm CEO of Smart Compliance and Smart Shift, a company helping startups and projects to track the liquidity on exchanges, and also consulting in tokenization and regulatory matters in Switzerland. So let's start. We don't have a lot of time, but we need to solve a lot of questions. My first question will be, let's decide what we're talking about. DeFi. What do we mean by DeFi? And Julian, let's start from you again, and let's exchange opinions. Truly DeFi, when we basically talk about compliance, does it really coexist? Or we're talking about non-compatible things?
Look, before I said partially, let me start with the reason why. I think they complement each other, clearly. You can't have one without the other. The technology is designed to be transparent. If it's designed to be transparent, it means it's designed to show at least the greatest extensive part of what happens on the blockchain, okay? That part is clear. Now, what is decentralization? I will take it from a MiCA perspective, from a European perspective, and I would say that there is no coherent approach as to what decentralization is, even with MiCA. And to prove it in a simple way, the regulation came in, the proposed regulation came in, now it's accepted. It will start being effective from June 30th, then December. Look at the report from the Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs in the EU, the Parliament, which actually introduced the law, one of the main players. They themselves recognize that post-MiCA, the first problem that they will have is how to classify decentralization and DeFi. So honestly, if I have to look at from a legal point of view, I can't really answer it directly. I can rely on what I've seen, and it's just peer-to-peer transactions through a protocol, plain simple. Look at Uniswap. That's it.
Benjamin, from perspective of the technological company, you're tracking the red flags and so on. The question is, do you really work with DeFi, or it's what is your subject? Where are you looking for the answers to the compliance questions?
So today the response for me is no, we are not working with any DeFi protocols or services. Because it's not yet regulated, not as clear for them, and they don't need a tool like Scorechain. But Scorechain, for you to know, track transactions, track wallets. So the DeFi, as in a sense, is fully transparent for us. It's even more transparent than the centralized exchange. So everything that happens in the DEX, everything that happens in NFT marketplaces or anything regarding staking and so on, we can track this. So in the product, it's ready, and it can adapt to future requirements, because the technology is there. But as speaking about technology and DeFi, I'm thinking about KYC, I'm thinking about all of this, and it's already conflictual in a way. So in terms of anti-money laundering, blockchain analytics reportings, that's no issue for us. Just waiting for the actors to have clear requirements, and then say, okay, I need to have reporting on my DEX, for instance, where the funds come from, where my user are buying the funds, for instance, where they are sent to. It's also kind of this kind of reporting. But when it comes to other kind of layers of compliance, KYC and other things that also exist, here there is a main issue for me. But for transaction monitoring, wallet monitoring, there is nothing like complicated for us.
In Asia Pacific, I think we have been going through a really interesting time. So cast your mind back to 2019, round about COVID time. We didn't have any rules and procedures in place. And if anything, when I was at BitMEX, people would say, Angelina, you've gone into crypto. Oh my God. You're going to be eaten by tigers, and you're so evil. And I just went, I'm an ex-regulator. I'm the same person. We were able to convince the Financial Services Development Council to push and work with the government. And the government then convinced the SFC to actually come out with a comprehensive set of rules. Flash forward to today. a woman who actually said, "Oh my God, Angelina, you've gone into crypto. You're going to be like ripped off or whatever." She came up to me and she said, "Angelina, I'm sorry. I was wrong. You were right. Crypto is now a key area for Hong Kong." And why am I telling you this story? Because I think that's why when he said, when I heard bullshit, I just went, oh. Regulation and compliance are the key to go forward in terms of institutional adoption. And DeFi is a very hot area in Asia. And if you get a chance to come over to Asia, nobody talks about it, but yet everybody knows about it, and everybody participates in projects from degens to normal people. I just like to try it because I like to try getting involved in different things. IOSCO, unfortunately, which is the International Organization of Securities Commissions, they've only issued one piece of guidance. And then our regulator, the SFC, came out and recapitulated the same thing. But what it does is it doesn't really give you very much guidance, but at least there's a bit of guidance out there that at least they know that it's out there. But I think that if more regulation came out, not to stifle, but to help the industry grow, I believe that DeFi will be even more popular. Now, there's a lot of discussion, and I spoke at Money 2020 in Bangkok, and our whole panel was on DeFi and whether or not it really helps. And I think throughout the whole panel, everybody believes that DeFi is a way for financial inclusion if it's properly used. There are a lot of great use cases that digital assets and systems can use and learn from DeFi. And decentralized finance is something that I think will lead the way, but we just need to have regulators and market participants working with regulators to help them so that they don't stifle the market. So I would agree with the premise, and I think, and I would challenge each and every one of you here, especially with Ekaterina working with Crypto Valley, this whole group, working with the regulators to push forward a reasonable regulatory regime that would help link to adoption.
Yes, I think if we look at the regulation and how they treat the DeFi industry, basically we have truly DeFi. We don't need regulation because it's purely about technology.
Yeah.
But most of the projects we see in DeFi exchanges, they have element of the centralization because we have somebody who profit on this or who marketing it, who have behind some legal entities which we don't know probably.
Disclosure.
Disclosure.
So we need disclosure.
And the question is, we still need to imply travel rules, which already in discussion for several years.
Right.
And I think, Lucas, you are the best expert to tell us how we can scale it, because when we look at Asia and Europe, there is some discrepancy in the regulation, and I don't even touch America. So the question is how we get into the situation that we can, in a safe manner, in comfortable way for DeFi organization, transfer information about users, because we will have to do it, I guess. We don't have any other choices. If it's not truly DeFi, it will be regulated. Yes?
System security, wallet protection, interoperability, all of those are really important. So, sorry.
Yes, and maybe just before you start discussing, we will have one more session on privacy. So I don't want to touch privacy now because my colleague Chris will discuss it more in details with the other team. And Lucas, just let's talk about travel rules and what will be the future, where the bottleneck, why we are not easily transferring money at the moment globally.
Maybe going back to the question, I would say, does compliance hold the key to mainstream crypto adoption? Yes. DeFi not, because there is only one DeFi, and that is Bitcoin. As soon as you have a foundation or a website or somebody in charge, it's not DeFi, and there is somebody to regulate, and if you don't follow the rules, you would have to follow the travel rule or any of the other KYC rules, and sooner or later some regulators probably come knocking down you, and especially if you don't follow the American rules. It doesn't matter where you are. Yeah, if you like to travel, then you have to follow the US rules, and the US rules are also not so easy or clear. And then coming back just to the travel rule, I mean, it's still a mess after 4 years in the, let's say, just centralized exchange world. So taking that into DeFi, considering most things aren't DeFi, but decentralized is going to be a complete mess if you really would apply that. So I think most projects will just not be compliant with MiCA TFR. In them not being compliant with Swiss travel rule, UK travel rule, those who actually enforce it didn't matter too much, but the EU is just enforcing it also if you're not based in the EU, not like Switzerland, who's only enforcing it if you're based in Switzerland. So I think they will, all these projects, all this foundation might sooner or later run into quite some regulatory issues.
Okay, where is how can we solve it? What's the solution? And do we need something different as travel rule for the industry?
I mean, I've always thought that we as an industry should work together with the regulators because we know what works and what doesn't. And it would be better that we speak to the regulators and work with them to come up with some type of legislation that would be easier for them than them coming up with it. None of them have ever worked in digital assets. Most of them are from traditional finance. So I would really, really encourage yourselves to engage with FINMA and engage with ESMA in terms of coming up with at least some thoughts of a more productive way. Because IOSCO, it's just a few questions. It's like, do you know who is behind the decentralized finance organization? Do you know this? Do you know that? But it doesn't say anything about regulation. So it's better that we do it than they do it.
Yes, but I was just in Paris at the FATF meeting where they have the regulators on one side, they're mostly quiet, and then the industry on the other side. And the issue is there, the industry is contradicting itself a lot. Like there are different viewpoints, different let's say interests at play. And so we are giving contradicting statements to the regulators. So we look very chaotic.
Can you give us examples of the contradictory statement just to understand where the contradiction is?
It's a bit it's a heikel, difficult, but sensitive topic because I don't want to call out specific ones. But let's say if you're at an exchange and at the same time you also have a solution, just to pretend you have a solution, and then of course you have a total different communication than the other solutions. Yeah.
So it's not
conflict
consistent,
of
but it's the same way in FINMA is in Switzerland. We are technology neutral, for example. It doesn't matter. You just need to provide information. Julian, please.
Yeah, but look, I think I understand Lucas when he says contradictions. I would say you said it actually well at the second point. The message is delivered differently as to what the industry would actually need. What concerns me, at least I would say from a FINMA perspective, it looks very promising. I am, and Angelina, I just want to bring you also on the loop that at least on how I've experienced it, we've done our fair share of collaboration with the regulator. I think the product of what the EU produced is something which resulted from collaboration with the regulators. Is it what we wanted?
Okay, interesting.
Maybe not. Because, again, I represent a company that is more CDFI, so CFI and DeFi combined. We still fall under the scope of MiCA, if you check the recital 22. Even if we are partially decentralized, we still fall under it. The fully decentralized project is still out. There's no idea, and there has been a loophole. They don't know what they're going to do. But the problem that MiCA solves was the problem that we had last year with the FTX, with the whole bubble boom that happened. If there was a MiCA there, it could have probably solved most of the problems that we had there. But we have problems now that are not going to be solved by MiCA
Julian,
anytime
but
soon.
you are European business, basically, right? You are
Yes, European and Swiss.
And if we look on the global scale, there are a lot of business shifting outside Europe because of MiCA as well. People try to avoid, and Asia is still the biggest market for crypto. The question is, what happens next? Will we see like a biopolaric system of just Europe, which not the biggest, you know, if you look at the population, it's all in Asia. We have US with the rules and nobody wants to touch, and we have Asia, or we still believe it will be some type of harmonization that basically compliance will be key to have border transactions, because by default crypto is without borders. Yes, we have cross-border transactions. So
I think, Ekaterina, we need to unify interpretations, because again, I refer back to the report from Econ. They listed Uniswap as a DEX project, an interpretation within the EU, and now look what's happening in the US. Wells notice, they rebutted, rightly so. They are right to rebut. But the interpretations are so bipolar that you can't gauge if you're going to go into another country. Is it the right solution? Is it going to solve a problem? It's too unforeseeable. A Pandora's box, I would say, even if you move.
I advised, I haven't been advising them now, but I advised a DeFi protocol, which is still trading even after COVID. So they buy and sell Bitcoin decentralized. And when I first gave them the advice, I just said, look, here's the SFC rules. Here's the Malaysian rules. Here's the Singapore rules. You can see them all. Safekeeping, don't rip off people. Full disclosure, don't screw anybody. And just stay off the radar. And you know what? They're still in operation. So they haven't screwed anybody. They haven't lost money. And they survived COVID. And the female CEO who runs this has followed that, and she's been successful, and it's going on. But she runs under the radar, and she doesn't really cause a huge, big stir. The wallets, they know who they are. So, I mean, that's one way of thinking about it. And but one day, the regulators are going to come, and they're going to start regulation for this area. So you might as well at least advise whoever you know to start at least thinking about being compliant.
And the question is, what happened with those who didn't do it, right?
They blew up. They blew themselves up. She's doing great.
So Benjamin, what's your...
Well, for me, most of our market is Europe, and we deal mainly with the centralized companies, not DeFi. But the questions arrived the same, because most of the time compliance officers ask me, do you actually within your tool succeed to track every transaction through DEXs or swaps from any different kind of decentralized services? The response is yes, but they always ask, what should we do with that? Should it be risky, medium risk, low risk? How can I interpret this transaction, which is just a swap? Is Uniswap more riskier than another DEX, for instance? So that's why, as a product perspective, there is a lack of understanding from the regulation. There is no clear rules. So the players have to adapt themselves. They have to adapt their risk appetite, even for centralized entities regarding DeFi, right? So in our main job at Scorechain is providing flexibility to adapt quickly. And that's mainly what we have to do, because even ourselves, we don't really know where we are kind of going if the regulation is not strictly saying what we have to do, even for centralized. So from the anti-money laundering perspective from DeFi, we track everything. We know if this is a DEX trade. The risk related to a centralized exchange, then sent to a cold wallet, then sent to a DEX. We track back to the centralized exchange. So the risk for us is related to the centralized exchange rather than the DEX, right? This is our approach today. This is how we try to help our communities, our partners, so they can basically adapt their own risk appetite with our rule engine. And as a product, this is what we can do today. But of course, we are waiting for regulation clarification, so we can just help our customers with better features, real-time analysis, and so on. Yeah.
I think it's a great comment because basically if we don't have a proper regulation, we need to use best practice in industry. And in Switzerland, we, for example, had the recommendation of banking association, how to onboard your client, and other things. When we try to consult client, we try to get all resources available globally, just to combine them together and to make the best out of it. But FATF also trying to do good things when they're trying to provide recommendation. They meet with participants and they try to consult. But we also see here the disharmony between the participants of the market, where each of them have a bit different interpretation of the rules, right? So, but still, the question is which country may be the leading country in terms of regulation? What is your opinion? Who should be the role model to use in your use cases when you create company? I'm not asking to advise which country we should register your business, but at least to be, to be the best. Like we have Swiss standards, for example, and when we say we do it in Swiss standards, it's usually people perceive it's very good, and Swiss regulation quite advanced in crypto. So maybe, Lucas, what's your opinion about which regulation or where we have more advanced situation globally?
I often find it entertaining when there's, actually rather sad, there's a company setting up shop in Switzerland, getting a WCOF SRO membership kind of license, and then they tell me, yeah, somebody told us we need to do a travel rule, and then they present me their business model, and I just say, guys, this does not actually work anymore in Switzerland because of the regulation that we have. It's very clear, but it's also very strict. And that's, I don't know if that was good for our economy. So therefore, maybe rather something like Seychelles, where you can do whatever you want.
Offshore. We had a session this morning where Liechtenstein was promoted a lot.
Or that sounds a bit better.
Yes, and what's your opinion, Angelica?
I'm slightly conflicted because I used to work at the SFC, and a lot of the legislation that I wrote for ATS is incorporated in the current virtual asset licensing regime. And I also help HashKey get their licenses. So for me, it was easy because I've been a compliance officer, a COO in those companies, and I already knew how to immediately get HashKey up and running. Now, was it fun to try to convince a bunch of mainlanders that compliance is important and KYC is important? It was difficult, but after a while they got it, and it's very much like traditional finance. So I find the SFC rules quite simple. I met with ESMA just recently, Jans Peters, and I'm quite impressed with how the EU has cobbled 27 countries together, because the one thing that we're seeing is all of these gigantic organizations have to be cobbled, because they're global. If you don't have a regulation that fits these organizations, then it's going to be very difficult for those organizations to further grow. And I think the ESMA pan-European rules are quite interesting also. But is there a perfect way of going? No, not yet. But that's why it's so important for all of us who are here today to be vocal, to be out there, to work with regulators, and to help them. And I've always been of the adage that if you help somebody, they will help you long term. So I think this is where, to get better regulation, we all have to work together with regulators.
And in Asia, it's easy to work with regulators, so you can call them and have a meeting. They are not, because in Europe we have a different regulators. In Switzerland, it's also quite open, but in many countries, try to get a meeting with regulator. You will never succeed. So
we are very open. I mean, they can't meet every day, but they will accommodate as necessary. And I'm a market participant. I'm here with Invest Hong Kong today to help make Hong Kong a crypto center. That is my goal. And there are 3 of us that are market participants helping Hong Kong government to do this because we really feel strongly about it. And I think this is the same for Europe with your Crypto Valley. You're coming to Asia, hopefully work with your regulators, and we can have collaboration and cooperation. So.
Well, for me, it really depends because we talk about Europe, but this is also a lot of local regulation. I was speaking a lot with the AMF in France. They were quite reactive, but if you compare with BaFin or if you order any regulators, it can change, right? So when you're talking with a new startup or a new project going into crypto in France or in Germany or in Switzerland or anywhere else or in Europe, it can depend as well on their own local regulation requirements, even if they are targeting MiCA. So it depends on this sense. But also, we have a lot of feedback from our own tool to know the best practices. And most of the time, the risk scenarios are the same. For transaction monitoring, wallet monitoring, velocity monitoring. To be honest, they don't really touch DEX. They don't really kind of try to set up anything regarding decentralized transactions and so on because they don't really know.
Exactly.
Yeah, they don't really know, so they just get away from this.
Yes.
But otherwise, regarding all the other requirements from, I guess, centralized ways of doing, because it also comes from the traditional way, right? This is why banks today go into custody, because there are more clarification in these regards, with Bitcoin and Ethereum as the main tokens today. But when it comes to DEXs, they just don't do it. It's like anonymous coins. They won't accept it as regulators because there is no way to track everything, so no clarification there. So yeah.
Julian, would you like to add?
This is going to be the toughest question to answer, honestly, because at least from my role, legal counsel in a CFI, worked with crypto lending. At some point, look, Switzerland was and maybe still is a very relevant player. I say was because when we moved to Switzerland, I can say that at the time when the industry was still very young, it had a very mature rules and very helpful rules. Unfortunately, as everything happens, not only with Switzerland, but also, as I explained before, in the EU, everything happens late or happens slow. So in the end, if I have to answer your question right now, I would say where I would not go. And right now, I will definitely not go to the US. It's still uncertain. You agree?
Totally. I'm American. You do not want to go to the US.
So that's where I will.
Do we have US representative here?
It's nothing against. So it's nothing against the US. Please don't get me wrong. It's like nothing against the persons. It's just the individuals. It's just the regulation. How the rules are interpreted, which is.
So what you're saying, MiCA is too late, you know, they have to be a bit faster
yeah, they have to be a bit
developing
faster,
things. And we still have this grandfather period, you know, like it's all a bit complicated. I
would say it's late because, as I said, some episodes we had last year would have been saved, but it's still incomplete. And they acknowledge that it is incomplete. For our business model, it is complete. We have a relatively sound idea of where we need to go, so it helps. But I can't say that for the rest of the industry.
Let's ask if audience has a question, because before we make official... Oh. Thank you. So you want more work for regulators, yes? They have structures, which difficult to identify.
Well, just saying, for DeFi actors, completely agree. But what about centralized actors? What should they do? That's maybe the main question here. Do they have to act as they don't hear, they don't want the DeFi to exist because they cannot comply in any way because they don't have the requirements? How they should react, I guess.
I mean, what he described is what Binance does and works pretty well, right?
Well, he just started his 4-month prison sentence, and he has less $2 billion. But I have to tell you,
Paid off still.
my boys at BitMEX, the one thing that one of the founders wanted to be is he wanted to be a peer. But guess what? He's a criminal now, so he'll never be able to get knighthood. Or maybe one day the British government will give it to him. And the others have criminal records. So for me, I would never pick that route because I don't want to take a risk of ever being arrested. But there may be companies that do, and in CZ's case, he's going to be in jail for 4 months, but he's had to pull out his licenses in Hong Kong because he is a criminal now, and as a UBO, he cannot get licensed. Now, some countries will allow that to happen, and some countries won't. So it's a choice, and it's how much risk you will take. I have survived BitMEX without any problem with my background, and I hold a CPA license, and I'm trying to get my law degree license. So I would never do that. But for those of you, you have to choose yourself. Do you want to make a ton of money? Maybe that is the right choice. I'm not particularly wealthy, but I'm happy. And you only have your reputation.
Okay.
Talking about the criminal activity
Yeah.
makes it clear. I'm just
True.
talking about
No.
the possibilities of 210 countries worldwide of a decentralized
Yes,
system in
that's
core.
true.
And banks need license exchange.
Okay, let me summarize it. I think that what you're saying that we can use different jurisdictions for different purposes. We can do
Yes,
things
very
right,
much. Agreed.
but maybe when we see complicity with regulation, why don't we go to different jurisdictions? We have choice, and we don't need to make a consolidated supervision.
Yes.
We don't need to do holding company. We can separate it and make a different functionality or different company. So let's just have 1 minute to conclude. And each of you, please give one advice to DeFi people to survive in the uncertainty during we get the proper regulation in place. Lucas.
Make sure you're completely anonymous. Nobody knows where you are and who you are.
Okay, super.
I would agree, and don't rip off any people to add on to that, because somebody will come back to you and find you.
Well, I would say doing some analytics too, because if you see that your platform is used by many suspicious activities for this specific token, maybe it's good to keep an analytics on this, and even for reportings, right? So you are already covered in a way if regulation happens, saying that, yeah, we have identified this activity before the regulation happened.
Agree.
I would say, I would reassure, they're not doing anything wrong, they're innovating. Just have a bare minimum to start working with. Something, as Guido mentioned, something small, just keep it going, and then see how it develops. But I reassure it, there is nothing wrong with DeFi. It is the next natural step, I think.
Okay, so maybe one thing from me, because just to summarize you, that let's also look at best practice and try to use the maximum what industry already developed and implement in your cases. So let me thank you all participants. And
let's give a big round of applause for our panelists.
And for our moderator.